I think for many of you horror fans, especially old school horror fans, or at least maybe my generation of horror fans, or maybe even before, would say that this is not the first Omen, not the first Omen that you've seen. But the movie is called The First Omen, so let's go with it and let's find out what this movie is all about. Starting with the IMDb plot, a young American woman is sent to Rome to begin a life of service to the church, but encounters a darkness that causes her to question her faith and uncovers a terrifying conspiracy that hopes to bring about the birth of evil incarnate. All right, all good stuff, or a lot of good stuff, especially at the end there. But yeah, kind of as I mentioned, this is the first Omen, supposed to be a prequel, I guess, of the original Omen, Damien and all his craziness. And, we've seen several sequels to that movie, remakes to that movie, but now we're going all the way and going forward, or before that, to events leading up to that. So, again, we find ourselves in a world of remakes and sequels of movies that, been here for a long time and so forth. You guys know that I'm always, generally not, the fan of that. Obviously, like I said, old school horror fans, we battle that, I want to see that movie again. I want to see them kind of continue on, but then, it should be left alone and so forth. At least they didn't do a remake here, but they've already done a remake here. So, it's that kind of struggle of should it be made? Why should it be made? Before we even see the movie and so forth. Then once you see the movie, you can complain if you really got your feelings hurt that they ruined it for you, or that you really like the movie. And I've obviously missed this movie when it came out. You see me doing this review. Obviously, this movie's been out for a long time. It is one that just kind of went by me, and I missed and just never got a chance to catch up. One that I wanted to make sure that I caught before I did my top 10 list. Just did that. Just did that review or that commentary. So I mentioned that there. So I wanted to make sure that this was a much talked about film, an important film for 2024. So I wanted to make sure that I squeezed this in before I made the considerations for a top 10 in it. So yeah, I'm late in the game in this movie, with this movie. But, I will still do the typical review here, try to be spoiler free. Although, I guess one of my problems with it, and I'll just jump right to the problems with it, is that it just didn't seem to have many twists and turns that I wasn't expecting. So that's definitely a problem. But I'll get more into that here in a second. Let's talk a little bit about what the movie is and where it goes. Yeah, we have here another young woman from America has decided to be a nun. I think we've seen this. We've definitely seen this. Goes to Rome to, be part of the church and start her road to fitting in and being part of all this craziness here that's in this church. Definitely not what she expected. So yeah, I mean, we're gonna get that. You get an introduction to her and kind of her role and kind of fitting in. She seems a little odd, not odd to the extreme, but we still what is going on there? Why she picked this road to go down? We're gonna meet other nuns in the church, meet some of the priests, and meet some of the young people that are there, that they're there helping and so forth. So we kind of get all that mixed in. And I would say, there are some things that, they do. And then once things are revealed, they kind of go back and kind of show you. They did do a pretty good job of that. Once you kind of see how certain things were done, and maybe early on in the film you're like, why are they boring me with this? But then they kind of show you and you're like, oh, okay, that's why they did that, and it makes sense now. I don't hate you for making me go through some of this nonsense. At least that's how I felt. But yeah, you know, obviously, she's going to be there. Obviously, we know if you're fans of The Omen, which, I think that's why you're watching. And, maybe some new school horror people, maybe not as aware. Maybe you've seen The Omen, not know where this is eventually going. I think that's one of the hard things about doing a prequel here is that the old school people here, and I apologize if I insult any of you by saying old school, but you kind of know if they're doing a prequel, you already know where they're going with this. So, how much of this movie is a surprise for you? Obviously, once she's introduced to you and you're getting to know her, and then once you're starting to see, where the evil plot is, it kind of narrows down to, is A going to happen? Is B going to happen? Or is C going to happen? And that's probably going to be the most shocking of it all. And I really didn't see it coming. And, wow, how, they did that to me. And I'm completely blown away that they got me on that one. For those who are not familiar with The Omen at all, you probably watched this movie and been like, hey, that was a pretty good twist. And, I liked all that. And, no, but no, I'm here to say that I think it was pretty much, this was going to happen or this was going to happen. I think they did a good job of drawing it out and making you wait to see, whether this was going to happen or that was going to happen. But I think, one of the faults there is that it more than likely was going to be A or B, and it was A or B, and then you're just kind of like, okay, well, what? There's no surprise there, there's no shock there, and then everything they tell you afterwards or show you afterwards, you're like, okay, and then, they lead you to almost the front door of The Omen, and you're like, oh, okay, so, I will say that I've seen a lot of people really like the movie, really love the movie, high regarded it. Like I said, I just did the top 10, seen this mentioned in some people's top 10. And if you really like the movie, I have no problem with that. It is a good movie. The acting is fine, the drama is fine, the suspense. I'm always into the blood and guts. There is a crazy scene there. Maybe could have had some more blood to it, but it's definitely a wild scene. I think let's just say a car was involved. For those who have seen the movie, know what scene I'm talking about. That was kind of wild in itself, but that's almost, I think if I remember correctly, about as bloody and gutty as it's going to get, and it was a crazy scene. So I give them credit for that. But I just think, overall, after watching it all and what they did and where they went, I was just kind of like, okay, it's almost like, we got a little bit of, I guess you accomplished what you want to accomplish by being a prequel and being like, okay, well, the original started here, and how did we really get here? Well, this is how we got here. And you're like, okay. So at the end of the day, was it really needed? I mean, we kind of already, you kind of already know, once the original movie starts and where it goes, like kind of like where it came from, you kind of have that idea. And they're just like, well, just in case you didn't have that idea, we're going to show you that idea, and because you need to know, and whatever. So I don't know. I don't know how necessary is it. Did we really need it? Did we super learn anything standard and new? Maybe they gave you something else to think about and to wonder about. Could we see another direction, following this movie that doesn't necessarily go to the other movie? Yeah, I think they leave that door kind of open at the end. The movie kind of got to a certain point. I thought the movie was going to end, and then they give us a little bit more, which again, I say might have opened the door for them to do something else in the Omen franchise, universe, whatever you want to call it. And I guess that's okay. Again, and I think I've said it in other reviews, with religious themes, they don't always do it for me because of the religious themes, and not that I'm, anti-religion or anti-religion in movies and whatever like that. I just I don't know. I just don't get into them as much. And as I kind of hinted at the beginning of this one, when she goes and she's in the church and blah blah blah, and we see her. I think even if this wasn't the Omen, you kind of already know what's going to happen, and we definitely saw another horror movie this year done. And I don't remember which one came first. I think the other movie came first. I'm not 100% sure. But we saw a young woman who came from another place, I think America as well, and she went and became part of the church, and then nothing good happened. Nothing good happened. And almost a similar circumstance here. Very similar. Almost in a way, again, like I said, this didn't necessarily have to be the first Omen. This could have just been another nun goes to the church and bad things happen movie, which the other movie was. And I think even we've seen it in other movies. So I think, we're at the point now where if you see a nun and she's going to go to a church, and especially, from America to, Rome or somewhere else, that kind of where the bad direction is going to go. It's either going to be like the nun who, whatever, tries to jump scare you, and, we can argue if it does or doesn't, and do that because, maybe that nun is not bad, but there's a bad nun there. Or more where this route is where someone is going to be impregnated, and whatever baby comes out is not going to be good, and the purpose of her being pregnant is not going to be good, or somebody's going to be pregnant and is not going to be good. We're not having a nice child here that's going to grow up and be a church leader and be there on Sundays or Saturdays or whenever and give you great speeches and be a person of the people. No, that's not, it's horror. It's not going to go, the baby is not going to come out good. So again, where do you go? Where do you surprise? It is much of the same, especially when you have another movie that comes out in the same year that follows a very similar path. I mean, obviously the movies are, a little bit different kind of tone to them. And obviously, the first Omen is pointing towards the, obviously the Omen and where that movie starts. And the other one kind of, went down the same avenue, but then, took its own course about where it eventually landed. And, so then, and I think that other movie that I'm mentioning, and I'm specifically not mentioning the title. I'm sure many of you know the movie I'm talking about. That movie I think was also on some people's list, or I wouldn't be surprised if it on some people's list of the top 10 movies. It was good in its own right as well, especially the ending and so forth. But again, having the religious theme and whatever, blah, blah, I don't know. I just don't get into it as I get into some of the other horror movies. So yeah, I think, that is definitely a huge hurdle in this movie for me, is as it starts to unfold. Yes, it has the name, Omen in the title, but that didn't mean that once it started rolling on, it went in something new in whatever direction. And I think that ends up being, a big reason why, I'm probably not as excited and overblown by the movie as maybe some were. I'm not going to say that I'm, huge into the Omen franchise and universe and whatever. I've seen some, haven't seen others, and so forth. Maybe I missed something. Maybe there's something else there that I missed. But, I think, again, when you do a prequel and you tell me that it's a prequel, but, most of what the movie happened could have been titled something else, and then, we wouldn't have missed anything. Like I said, it does tie together the Omen at the end. There is a scene specifically in it that is kind of makes is a huge reminder of the original Omen, a huge scene in horror and horror history, especially when you think of the Omen. So it kind of ties that together. So that was another good scene, an important scene to have. Speaking of it, and kind of maybe we had that scene and that's why we had that other scene in the original movie. So okay, the acting is fine in the movie. The woman who's here, she does a fine job. Like I said, plays a little awkward, but then has her moments as the film kind of goes on, and they do a decent job of, like I said, they feel like they're wasting your time a little bit early on, but then give you something, kind of say, okay, well, we showed you that because, and then you're like, oh, okay, well, you didn't completely waste my time, but still. They do have some creepy things. There's I don't want to say it specifically, spoil anything for those who haven't not seen it yet. There's a moment or two of some creepiness there, whatever. It does get a little wild towards the end. But again, to me, the biggest issue is, it is just not, there's nothing there that's truly new and wild for me. Like I said, yeah, that one scene with the car, that was good. But there's just nothing at the end of the day that just makes me, oh my God, this was so different. I didn't expect us to end up here and, before that. And I don't know, I just watched the movie and was just like, okay, might not, didn't have to have the name Omen on it. Could have been something else, and been just fine. Where they ended it and drawing the connection between the two movies was fine. That was fine. But, then at the end of the day, I think, did we need it? No. Did it do anything? Now do anything in this movie that made it seem like we needed to have this, to have an explanation, to go in front of the original movie that, we're like, wow, like we needed that prequel. No, I don't think so. I think we were plenty fine where we were, and now that we know other stuff, we're not worse off, but did we really need to? Probably not. So, yeah, I probably going to guess that I'm in the minority here. I know a lot of people like the movie. I remember seeing a lot of people say a bunch of good things about the movie. Again, not a bad movie, just, didn't, go anywhere for me. Did anywhere, whatever. And again, when I think about it in comparison to the other movie, and what is the big difference here, here and there, but overall same kind of direction, kind of going in the same area. So, that makes it harder to say that this movie really stood out. So yeah, I that's where I am for this movie. I don't know what it is for you guys. Like I said, if you're huge Omen fans, and maybe there's something else that I don't know that's going on in this movie that it did to connect to the other movie, or maybe even some of the other sequels or whatever, feel free to fill me in if I missed something. Whatever. Again, solid movie overall. Just I don't know that it's, again, needed or went anywhere. So with that, I think I'm gonna give it 2.5 pools of blood. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like I should just jump on board with everybody else and kind of give it a higher score, but I don't know, it just didn't do anything for me. It didn't wow me in any way or whatever. Didn't push me in a different direction. Yeah, it is. That's what it is. So it's going to be 2.5 pools of blood out of 5 for this one. If I've disappointed you, I'm sorry, but yeah, I'm glad I saw it, though. I'm glad I caught it in here before the end of the year and checked that one off the list. So yeah, so with that, horrorsgorereviews.blogspot.com is where you can find all of my reviews written in video. Certainly plenty of video reviews for a while now. So feel free to like, subscribe, and do everything else that everybody wants you to do here on YouTube. And if not, no worries, it is okay. and maybe you hate me after after this review. But I thank you for your time regardless. Twitter, Facebook information down below as well. Feel free to reach out and talk about horror, talk about this movie with me there, and definitely in the comments section if you completely disagree or you agree. Or you want to know what that other movie that I mentioned, I keep mentioning, was. If you ask, maybe I'll put it there. But I think many of you know which movie I'm referring to. And anything else you want down in the comment section regarding horror or whatever, feel free to do so. So with that, again, I thank you for your time, and I'll catch you on the next review, horror fans.